The air in Arthur Sterling's palatial estate was thick with the scent of money, a heady mix of imported lilies, aged leather, and the subtle, clean aroma of ozone from the state-of-the-art climate control system. It was the night of the Sterling Foundation's biannual architectural showcase, an event where the titans of industry and the vanguards of design converged. Tonight was special. Arthur, a man whose net worth was discussed in the same hushed, reverent tones as the GDP of a small nation, was unveiling the short list of architects for his magnum opus, the Sterling Center for Global Innovation. Models of impossible buildings sat on illuminated pedestals like offerings to the gods of progress. Glass towers twisted towards the heavens, ecodomes promised sustainable utopias, and cantilevered museums defied gravity. Guests, draped in couture and dripping with jewels, drifted from one marvel to the next, their murmurs a symphony of praise and critique. Arthur Sterling, a man carved from granite and ambition, surveyed his kingdom. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, missed nothing. They scanned past a senator, a tech mogul, and a celebrated artist before landing on a figure who seemed conspicuously out of place. Near the far end of the grand gallery, a black man stood observing a complex lighting track on the ceiling. He wasn't dressed in the uniform of the evening, no tailored suit or designer dress. Instead, he wore simple, dark trousers and a well-worn but clean chambray work shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He had a focused, analytical expression, his head tilted as if diagnosing a problem. Arthur's brow furrowed. With the amount he paid for event staff, imperfections were unacceptable. A light in the west gallery had been reported to be flickering earlier. This must be the maintenance guy, finally getting to it. He strode across the marble floor, his custom-made leather shoes making no sound. "Excuse me," Arthur said, his voice polite but firm, the tone of a man accustomed to giving orders. The man turned. He was perhaps in his late 40s, with a calm, intelligent face and eyes that seemed to hold a quiet depth. He wasn't startled, merely attentive. "There's a persistent flicker in one of the spotlights in this gallery," Arthur continued, pointing a manicured finger toward the ceiling. "It's distracting. Could you have a look at it? We need this to be perfect." The man's eyes followed Arthur's gesture. He gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "I see it," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. "It looks like a minor ballast issue. Simple fix." "Good. See to it," Arthur said, already turning away, his mind moving on to the next dozen items on his mental checklist. He paused. "And when you're done, find the event manager. She'll compensate you for your time." He gave a dismissive wave and disappeared back into the crowd, the encounter already forgotten. He glanced at the flickering light again. He could have ignored it, could have found a staff member and passed on the billionaire's message. But Julian was a man who believed in the integrity of a space, down to the last detail. A building wasn't just a structure, it was an experience. And a flickering light was a flaw in that experience. He spotted a small utility ladder discreetly tucked into an alcove. With the ease of someone who had spent countless hours on construction sites, he positioned it, climbed up, and opened the fixture. As he had suspected, a loose wire on the electronic ballast. His fingers, as adept with delicate wiring as they were with a drafting pen, secured the connection. He closed the casing, and the light now shone with a pure, steady luminescence. As he descended the ladder, he noticed a few guests watching him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. He simply folded the ladder and returned it to the alcove, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He brushed the dust from his hands and melted back into the periphery of the crowd, his anonymity a comfortable cloak. An hour later, the main event began. The guests gathered in the central atrium, a cavernous space with a 3-story glass wall overlooking the city lights. Arthur Sterling took the stage, bathed in the glow of a single, perfectly aimed spotlight. "Welcome," he boomed, his voice resonating with power. "Tonight, we are not just looking at buildings. We are looking at the future. The Sterling Center for Global Innovation will be more than a landmark, it will be a beacon, a place where the brightest minds on Earth will come together to solve the world's greatest challenges." He spoke for 10 minutes, painting a grand vision of philanthropy and progress. He then introduced the 3 finalists, each a titan in their own right. The first 2, a Japanese minimalist and a German deconstructionist, presented their models to polite, appreciative applause. Their designs were brilliant, but safe. Arthur paused for dramatic effect. His philosophy of sustainable humanism is revolutionizing the way we think about the spaces we inhabit. It is my distinct honor to introduce the lead architect for the Nexus a proposal. Dr. Julian Marcus. A wave of applause rippled through the atrium. From the side of the stage, Julian Marcus emerged. He was wearing the same chambray shirt and dark trousers. He hadn't changed. He didn't need to. He walked to the center of the stage and stood beside a stunned Arthur Sterling. In the front row, a woman gasped, nudging her husband. The whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Arthur's face, usually a mask of controlled confidence, was a canvas of disbelief. His mouth was slightly agape, his eyes wide. He looked from the man on the stage to the empty space by the West Gallery lighting track, the connection finally, devastatingly, being made in his mind. Julian calmly shook Arthur's limp hand and turned to the audience. He approached the podium, his quiet confidence filling the vast space. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady and clear. He looked out at the sea of faces, his gaze briefly locking with Arthur's. "Mr. Sterling speaks of a beacon. And for a beacon to be effective, it must be flawlessly constructed. Every component, from the deepest foundation to the most intricate circuit, must work in perfect harmony. It's always important to ensure every detail, right down to the lighting, is perfect." A few people in the audience who had witnessed the earlier exchange chuckled nervously. Most were simply captivated by his presence. Arthur Sterling looked as if he had been struck by lightning. The color drained from his face, replaced by a flush of profound, public humiliation. Julian didn't dwell on it. He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him lit up with an image of his design, Nexus. It was breathtaking. It wasn't just a building, it was a living ecosystem. A structure that breathed, that harvested its own water and generated its own power, with soaring lines that seemed to draw inspiration from both nature and the human form. For the next 20 minutes, Julian Marcus held the audience spellbound. He spoke not just of steel and glass, but of community and connection. He explained how the building's central atrium was designed to mimic a forest canopy, creating a sense of shared shelter. He detailed how the workspaces were designed to foster collaboration, breaking down the hierarchical structures of traditional offices. He showed them the public gardens, the integrated learning centers for local children, the way the building's facade would change color with the seasons. When he finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, the atrium erupted. It wasn't polite applause, it was a thunderous, standing ovation. People were on their feet, their faces alight with genuine excitement. They weren't just clapping for a building, they were clapping for a vision, for the quiet, undeniable genius they had just witnessed. Julian gave a slight, humble bow. As the applause continued, he walked off the stage, leaving the image of his masterpiece glowing behind him. The rest of the evening was a blur for Arthur Sterling. He moved through the crowd in a daze, accepting congratulations on an event that had become a personal catastrophe. He knew, with sickening certainty, that the story of his gaffe would be the talk of the town for months. Later, as the guests began to depart, Arthur saw Julian standing alone by the glass wall, looking out at the city. He was holding a simple glass of water, seemingly unfazed by the storm he had created. Arthur's pride warred with his shame. He was a man who rarely admitted fault. But he was also a man who recognized true excellence when he saw it. He took a deep breath and walked over. "Dr. Marcus," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Julian turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Sterling. I have no words," Arthur stammered. "My behavior earlier was inexcusable. It was ignorant, arrogant, and I am profoundly sorry." Julian looked at him for a long moment, studying the contrition in the older man's eyes. "I appreciate that, Mr. Sterling," he said finally. "But it wasn't about you or me. It's about what you saw. Or rather, what you didn't see." "I saw a man in a work shirt," Arthur admitted, his voice low. "I made an assumption. A terrible one." He took a sip of water. "I'm not angry, Mr. Sterling. I'm just tired. Tired of having to prove, over and over, that I belong in the room. My work should be enough." Arthur stood in silence, the weight of Julian's words settling upon him. He had built an empire on his ability to judge, to assess, to see value where others didn't. Yet tonight, his vision had failed him completely. He had looked at a king and seen a servant. "Your work," Arthur said, his voice filled with a new respect, "is more than enough. It's magnificent. The Sterling Center, it has to be yours. There is no other choice." A small, genuine smile finally touched Julian's lips. "Then I accept," he said. "Not just for me, but for every young black boy and girl who dreams of building the future, so that one day, they can walk into any room and be seen for exactly who they are." The two men stood there for a moment longer, the billionaire and the architect, two powerful figures from different worlds, now bound by a moment of humbling revelation. Outside, the city glittered, a vast tapestry of light and shadow, of structures and stories, waiting to be redesigned. Thank you for watching this story. We hope it served as a powerful reminder that we should never judge a book by its cover. The world is full of hidden genius, and it's on all of us to look deeper, beyond our own biases and assumptions. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true stories that inspire and make you think. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Until next time, keep an open mind.